The countryside roads stretched endlessly, lined with crooked trees that clawed at the sky like bony fingers. The wind was sharp, restless, carrying with it the smell of damp earth and the promise of rain. In the back seat of the carriage sat Adrian Blackthorn, a young man of 27 whose life had been torn open by a letter 2 weeks ago. The letter was short, formal, written by a solicitor. His uncle, distant, reclusive, the kind of relative whispered about in family gatherings, had died, leaving Adrian the last heir of the Blackthorn estate. He hadn't wanted to come. Every story he'd heard about the place carried the weight of old curses. Walls that whispered, windows that opened themselves at night, portraits that shifted their eyes. Yet, duty, and perhaps a shadow of curiosity, had dragged him here. The carriage rattled to a stop before the gates. Blackthorn House rose like a dark memory against the stormy sky, its windows blind and empty, its roof lined with black slate that glistened with mist. Adrian stepped out, his boots sinking into the wet gravel, and felt the weight of the house press down on him immediately. The butler who met him was pale and wordless, leading him inside with stiff precision. The air smelled of mildew and ash. The portraits that lined the entrance hall were faded but sharp in their eeriness, pale faces, sunken eyes, mouths caught mid-secret. That night, the first began. Adrian was writing at his uncle's old desk when he heard it, a whisper. Low, too close. He turned. But the room was empty. Then the sound of footsteps overhead, heavy, pacing. Yet the butler had gone hours ago. He lit a candle and climbed the staircase. The second floor was colder, the air sharp enough to sting his skin. The footsteps stopped the moment he arrived. Only silence. Only shadows. But when he turned back toward his bedroom, he saw it. On the wall, written in something dark and wet. Get out. The candle trembled in his hand. He did not sleep that night. By morning, Adrian knew he needed help. The letter had made it clear. He owned this place now. Selling it might take months. Living here alone was unbearable. He needed someone who understood these things. So he sent for her. Her reputation was whispered in taverns, rumored among priests and scholars alike. She called herself an investigator of the supernatural. Some claimed she was a fraud. Others said she had stood in graveyards at midnight and conversed with the dead. Her name was Elena Graves. She arrived 3 days later on horseback. The storm had broken that morning, leaving the sky pale and washed, the roads gleaming with puddles. Adrian met her at the gates. She was in her early 30s, tall, with sharp cheekbones and black hair pulled into a loose braid. Her coat was dark, her gloves leather, her eyes the color of iron. There was something in her gaze that unsettled him, not because it was cold, but because it seemed to see straight through him into marrow, into shadow. You must be Adrian Blackthorn, she said, her voice low, steady. And this is the house. Her eyes lingered on the mansion for a long time, her expression unreadable. When she finally spoke again, it was with something like curiosity. It already knows I'm here. From that moment, the air inside Blackthorn House seemed different. Heavier. Alive. Almost hostile. That night, as they dined in the long, dim dining hall, a sudden shatter rang out. A mirror across the room had cracked clean down the middle. Elena only smiled faintly, as if amused. Good, she murmured. It's testing us. The days that followed were a blur of exploration. Elena insisted they map every corner of the house. The attic was filled with trunks of old clothes, letters, and broken dolls whose glass eyes reflected candlelight in unsettling ways. One trunk held ritual books, pages stained with wax and something darker. The basement was worse. The smell of damp stone and rusted iron chains hung in the air. Old chalk, circles, symbols, and bones scattered the floor. Something had been summoned here long ago. And then the mirrors. Nearly every room had one, tall and ornate, their glass strangely deep. Elena stared into them too long, as if expecting something to stare back. Once, Adrian swore he saw a Shadow moved behind his reflection, though his own body had been still. One evening, the attack came. As they crossed the second-floor corridor, the lamps blew out one by one, plunging them into darkness. A low groan echoed through the walls. The floorboards trembled. Then banged the door. At the end slammed shut, locking itself. Adrian panicked, but Elena stood tall, her lantern raised high. Shadows burst from the walls like black smoke, clawing at them, whispering in voices that weren't human. Adrian screamed, swatting at them uselessly. Elena, calm even in chaos, drew a vial from her coat and hurled it against the ground. A sudden blaze of blue fire lit the corridor, the shadows recoiling like wounded beasts. The whispers stopped. The corridor fell silent. Elena turned to Adrian, her face unreadable. This house is alive. And it doesn't want us here. Adrian was not alone in his new inheritance. His younger sister, Clara Blackthorn, had arrived too, days after Elena. Clara was 24, sharp-minded, with a beauty that seemed out of place in the gloom of Blackthorn House. Where Adrian was cautious, she was bold. Where he trembled, she laughed. And from the first moment, Elena noticed her. The connection was subtle at first. A lingering glance across the dinner table. The way Clara's laughter softened Elena's otherwise hard edges. The brush of hands as they passed lanterns in the hall. One night, after Adrian had retired early, Clara found Elena alone in the library. The rain lashed against the windows, thunder rolling like drums. "You don't scare easily," Clara said, curling into a chair opposite her. "Fear is useless," Elena replied simply. "It feeds them." Clara smiled, tilting her head. "And what feeds you?" For the first time, Elena's composure faltered. Her eyes lingered on Clara a moment too long. Something unspoken hummed between them, fragile but undeniable. It was the house, of course, that broke the moment. A sudden slam echoed through the library, every candle extinguishing at once. In the dark, a whisper hissed directly into Clara's ear. "She is mine." Clara gasped, clutching the armrest of her chair. The whisper still lingered in her ear, curling like smoke. "She is mine." "Elena," her voice cracked, softer than she intended. Elena was already on her feet, lantern flaring back to life with a single strike of her lighter. The sudden glow painted her face in amber, shadows clinging to the sharp lines of her jaw. "What did it say?" Elena asked, her tone low, dangerous. Clara hesitated. It said something strange." "Tell me." Clara's eyes lifted to her, wide, vulnerable. "It said, 'She is mine.'" The library fell into a silence so thick, Clara thought she could hear the house itself breathing. Elena's hand brushed Clara's shoulder, steady, protective. The contact was brief but electric, sparking something neither dared name. "Don't answer the whispers," Elena murmured. "They want fear. They want surrender." But even as she spoke, Elena's own heartbeat betrayed her, pounding too loudly in her chest, not only from the haunting, but from Clara herself. The next evening, the house stirred again. Adrian had insisted on checking the eastern wing, the part of Blackthorn House sealed for decades. The doors groaned open, stale air rushing out like a sigh from a grave. Inside was a room lined entirely with mirrors. Some cracked, some fogged, some reflecting not their bodies, but flickering shadows that did not move in time. Clara stood close to Elena, their shoulders nearly touching. She whispered, "Why do I feel like they're watching us?" "They are," Elena replied bluntly, scanning the frames with her lantern. "Mirrors hold. They remember." As if to prove her words, one of the mirrors rippled. Clara gasped, clutching Elena's sleeve. In the glass, they did not see themselves. Instead, Clara saw her reflection pressed against Elena's body, mouths locked in a desperate kiss, Elena's hands gripping her waist as if claiming her. Her breath hitched. She tore her gaze away, cheeks flushed. "Elena," she started. But Elena's eyes had lingered too, flicking briefly to the mirror before wrenching back to the room. She said nothing, but Clara saw the faint tremor in her fingers. The entity wasn't just haunting them. It was taunting them. That night, the storm returned. The house groaned like a ship in the wind, windows rattling. Adrian, retired early, exhausted from another fruitless attempt to map the labyrinthine halls. Elena remained awake, patrolling the corridor with her lantern. Clara followed quietly, her nightdress brushing the floor, her hair loose around her shoulders. "Do you ever sleep?" Clara teased softly. Elena smirked faintly. "Not in places like this." They paused at the far hallway, where the air grew suddenly cold. Their breath fogged in the lantern. "Light." Clara shivered. "Elena," she whispered, stepping closer. "Why do I feel safer with you, even when everything is falling apart around us?" The words slipped out before she could stop them. Elena turned, and for a long, heavy moment, the storm, the whispers, the groaning house, all of it vanished. There was only Clara, her eyes wide and searching, her lips parted with something that was not fear but longing. The lantern flickered out. Darkness swallowed them whole. And in that dark, Clara's hand found Elena's. Fingers tangled. A breathless silence. Then Elena leaned down, and Clara rose up to meet her. Their mouths collided, urgent, trembling. Hungry. A kiss stolen in defiance of the house, of the entity, of the chains of silence they both carried. It was desperate, like breathing after nearly drowning. When they broke apart, Clara's forehead rested against Elena's. Both women gasped, their hearts pounding like drums in the dark. "Elena," Clara whispered, voice breaking. Before Elena could reply, the walls themselves shuddered. A deep, guttural growl reverberated through the house, shaking dust from the ceiling. The entity had felt it, and it was enraged. The hallway split open with a deafening crack. Shadows poured forth like black water, flooding the corridor. The lantern shattered in Elena's hand, plunging them into writhing darkness. A voice, deep and layered with malice, roared through the air. "She belongs to me." Clara screamed as something unseen yanked her backward. Elena seized her wrist, pulling hard, but the force was immense. Their fingers slipped, their grip nearly breaking. "Elena!" Clara cried. With a roar of defiance, Elena lunged, wrapping both arms around Clara as the shadow surged. They were dragged, screaming, into the black maw of the house itself. The mansion had finally revealed its true master, and it would not let them go.